Hey everybody, I'm Sam Haymart and this is Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2026 GMC Yukon AT4 Ultimate. That is a mouthful because there's a lot going on here. So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. So having a look at the vehicle that GMC has given us, the first thing I want to go over is the fact that this is the full-size SUV platform architecture from General Motors. This is essentially the same vehicle as the Chevrolet Tahoe and the Cadillac Escalade. Three different variations of the same basic architecture, three distinctive flavors, and there's a lot of in between when it comes to the trim grades within them. GMC, of course, fits sort of in between Cadillac and Chevrolet. And when we look at the vehicle we have here, the AT4 Ultimate, it is nearly the top of the trim grade lineup for GMC on the Yukon. As tested, we are at $102,000 and some change. That is a pretty healthy amount. But you can spend more here if you go to the Denali Ultimate, which, while it has a very similar level of trim and content when it comes to luxury, this is really more geared to the off-road user. It's got off-road suspension, it has off-road tires and wheels, it has off-road styling, and when we get out for a drive, we'll talk a little bit more about its extra capabilities. But looking at it, the GMC in general has more chiseled features. It's a little bit more muscular and masculine in its design. You can see in the hood a lot of sculpting and creasing, very square jawed up front, LED headlights, very bold looking. Each trim grade on the Yukon has its own grille design. Here we have gloss black trim, a lot of it. Down in the lower fascia you can see red tow hooks. Those are functional, those are not ornaments. And down below that you can see this has a pretty healthy aluminum skid plate. So you really can take this off-roading and worry a little bit less about your hardware. Not only things getting up in there, but things bashing and causing you damage that might cause you to not get home. Looking at what we have for rolling stock, this has 20-inch wheels on this trim grade. Now, 20-inch wheels on a vehicle geared towards off-roading seems like a little bit of a stretch, but you can see that the all-terrain tire that they paired with this wheel still has a pretty tall sidewall. These are not low-profile tires by any means. One of the features this does have, which might be good for off-roading, are the power running boards. When you open the door, they come down. Now, I don't typically like these, and one of the reasons why is because when I get up close to the vehicle, like if I lean in to get something, I always hit my shins on these things when I least expect it, but they are helpful for a lot of people. If you don't like them, they do have an off switch. That's the nice thing, but I have them turned on for a video shoot here just to demonstrate them. The upshot is that if you do off-roading, you don't want those down anyway, so the fact that they can go back up and tuck under is a good thing. It might mean they're going to be there next time you go to use them. Up on top, this has standard roof rails in gloss black, and also up there, a full panoramic glass roof. Coming around to the rear three-quarter view, we can see that this is a vehicle that has a pretty nice shape to it. And even though what you see here looks very similar, whether you look at the Chevrolet, the GMC, or the Escalade does have a lot more differentiation with the taillights and the trim, but the GMC and the Chevrolet quite a bit closer, particularly here in this area of the C-pillar. And it's got a nice kick up here. It looks handsome, I think. Looking at the rear, this does have unique taillights and trim for the GMC. This is a power hatch, as we would expect at this price point. Also nice is that rear window does pop open by itself separately, so you don't have to open the entire hatch. If you have an ice chest in there, let's say, and you just want to reach in and grab a drink without opening the whole thing, you can just pop that open and do that. So I think that's pretty neat. Now, looking at the rear bumper, this has some pretty good looking, pretty big actually, dual exhaust tips on both sides in the center. A cover right now for the trailer hitch receiver. This has a full tow package and tow assistance system, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. And looking underneath, you can see that this has a fully independent suspension and a full-size spare tire. The independent rear suspension, this is the first generation of the full-size SUV from GM to offer that. And that's a good thing because this has better handling, better ride as a result. When you step inside the Yukon AT4 Ultimate, you realize what you've just spent your money on. And that's because pretty much everything that's available is here when it comes to luxury features, technical features, and all of the comfort features that really make a vehicle fully loaded. And they pretty much only come one way. There aren't that many standalone options. There aren't that many packages. Everything that you see here is pretty much how this trim grade comes that we're going to be talking about. First of all, the dash. This is a completely different dash design than you're going to find in the Chevrolet Tahoe, a completely different design than you're going to find in the Cadillac Escalade. This is an interior design that is specific to the Yukon, and it has a lot of luxury touches. It has soft stitch trim on the dash, on the door panels, open pore wood trim on the dash, on the door panels, and a lot of accent stitching. These seats that I'm sitting in, look at these. These have full grain leather all the way back to the rear rows. They are heated and ventilated up front. They are heated in the second row, fully powered, and they have massage functions here. They're very comfortable, I might add. Right ahead of me is a big digital instrument cluster. The steering wheel, leather and heated. It has paddle shifters and controls. There's a big shiny part of the steering wheel. That's because Super Cruise is standard here. Over on the center stack, this has a very large portrait style infotainment center, which is unique to the Yukon. Not going to find this in the Chevrolet. And it has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto still, even though General Motors is getting rid of that in some of their other vehicles. The entire screen has control. There is separate controls down on the bottom for the HVAC hard controls. There is a volume knob in the center, and that allows you to basically go through and do a lot of the most basic things for your HVAC without having to page through menus and dig in to the system, which is good because you just want to turn the fan up, change the temperature, and the heated and ventilated seats are right there as well. If you get into this deep, the navigation here is quite well done. The graphics are good, and it only takes a short time to learn where everything is at. All of the controls for the drive modes, the suspension, the controls for the vehicle, how you want things set, the running boards that I talked about, controls are all in here. It's well laid out. The reach is good. And as I sit here, I've got just a nice balance, as it were. Now, when it comes to storage here in the center console, you've got slide open covers here. They're piano black. Not my favorite because they show the dirt and dust really easily. A place for your phone down in the bottom, wireless charging, cup holders here. You can put big cups in there, and then a lot of storage here. There's storage down here. This whole pod moves around and slides forward and back so you can adjust it. There's a lot of storage in here, about the size of 2 rectangular tissue boxes. And there's a really nice AT4 Ultimate badge right here on top of this armrest, matches the ones that you're going to find on the seats. This has a Bose audio system, 18 speakers, headrest speakers, and you saw that with these seats. They sound really good. They're not blasting in your ears. They're just sort of offering some ambient sound, but when you really crank up the audio, you can tell the sound is coming from them. It's a nice touch. Above me is a panoramic roof, and this does have a opening front section as well as a full cover so that you can turn it off if you want and not have the light coming through. But it does really brighten up this otherwise dark cave-like interior. All the controls for the four-wheel drive system are over here to my left, as well as the controls for all of the trailering features and whatnot. This has a full suite of trailering aids with a full surround view camera and a lot of different views, a lot of different applications you can use to help you back up and connect to your trailer, as well as simply backing it up and doing a lot of the functions that people tend to have difficulty with. This has a lot of software toys that can really help you with your trailer. Way too much to talk about here in this particular instance, but it's well done. As we look at the back seat, you'll see I tried to set my camera angle up here so you can really see everything that's going on here, because they've got a lot back here for your rear seat passengers. You can see the screens right on the backs of these headrests. Full entertainment system, headphones included, and this has a number of wireless options for streaming content, as well as you can plug in down below with the HDMI cables if you've got your own devices that you can bring content to the vehicle. You can also have a screen which really sort of entertains on the road trip with metrics, speed, fuel range, trip information. You can really dig through that and find things just to keep people entertained or answer their questions. Are we there yet? Look at your screen. And so this is the nice feature that's part of this trim grade that we've got on this one. Down below on the back of the center console is a large 8-inch touchscreen control center for all of the rear air and heating back here, the heated seats back here. And there are vents up here on the ceiling, air all the way back to the third row. These seats are captain's chairs. They are heated, and boy, are they comfortable. I have to tell you, a lot of times these captain's chairs aren't really all that comfortable, but they've done a nice job with side bolstering, and there's fold down armrests, and they do fold and tumble quite easily so that you can get access to the third row. As you can see there, it's a pretty good sized third row. It's got good distance off the floor, so adults can sit back there and they're not scrunched and sitting down in a hole. And there's plenty of leg room. These captain's chairs do slide forward and back so that you can make the adjustments necessary to make sure everybody's got space. And when we get to the rear cargo area, even with the third row up, there's a good level of storage back there. Putting those down, these are power third row seats. Press a button, down they go, and you can put 60-40 split, one or the other or both, and then power them back up. So you really don't have to go to any work back there at all. And when everything is down, including these captain's chairs, you do have a pretty nearly flat load floor. All right, everybody, we're ready to take a drive. We are out here in the beautiful desert. Look at this. How appropriate for an all-terrain for GMC. Let's talk about the engine. This has a 6.2 liter V8. It is a GM staple, very popular. A lot of vehicles that GM sells offers this engine, 420 horsepower, and this does come with a 10-speed automatic transmission. This has a 2-speed transfer case, 4-wheel drive, and it has a setting where you can just put it on auto and it'll decide what it needs to be in, or you can set it manually, 4 high, 4 low, or keep it locked in 2-wheel drive. So if you watch my videos, you know one of the questions I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're going to come to a complete stop. We are out in the middle of nowhere. There should be nobody around. And we're going to go. Nice V8 rumble. And we're moving. This is a heavy vehicle, and 60. So power is good, right? This 6.2 liter V8, this 10-speed automatic transmission does its job very well. Even though this thing weighs a lot, it moves it pretty good. And it's going to have plenty of capability when it comes to towing, when it comes to loading it down and doing whatever you're going to do with it. This is going to have the type of power that you need. The torque, the horsepower, it's all good. This transmission has worked very well in almost everything that I've tested in Fords, Chevrolets, GMCs, because the two companies partnered up on this 10-speed transmission. It is a little bit different depending on which of the two corporations you buy it from and the tuning and things like that, but it's generally the same gearbox, and that's a good thing because it's a good gearbox. It can skip gears, so you're not going through 10 gears every time you accelerate. It's really just always where you want it all the time. That's what I really love about it, and it never really hunts around too much. One of the reasons it's here, cattle guard, is because it enables this engine to achieve fuel economy given the weight and the size and the horsepower that's going on here that you might not expect. Now, is it good? No, not really. It's 14 city, 18 highway, and 16 combined, and 16's about what I got with it this week. Just kind of cruising around town and living with it. So this is a big, heavy, thirsty SUV. We haven't improved that lot over the decades of all of this fuel-efficient hoochie-coo. I hate to say it, but if you're buying this vehicle for $102,000, chances are you're not too darn worried about gas. And, you know, speaking for a friend, speaking as someone who's had these big vehicles before, when I could afford them and when I needed them, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to what the gas was costing me. It's just what I wanted, what I needed, and what I was going to get. So there's that. So yeah, powertrain good. Powertrain good. With the MagneRide dampers that this has and the 4-corner air suspension, as I drive along right now, this has a pillow cloud-like ride. Even though this does have some pretty aggressive all-terrain tires, it's pretty quiet out here, and this is noisy pavement. A lot of sound deadening in here, and this is just a nice, comfortable, quiet, hushed existence cruising along out here on this back road in this vehicle. You can throw it into a corner at speed, and these MagneRide dampers can automatically stiffen up in milliseconds, and so they can adjust as the computer sees fit. You start throwing in steering inputs, braking, acceleration, maybe you change up the drive modes. These dampers can adjust on the fly. And so that's great because it lets you have the soft suspension, but when you throw it into a curve, you can actually feel this thing kind of like a cat. When a cat starts changing how their strength and their balance works when it goes from just standing there to getting ready to launch. And that's one of the characteristics of the MagneRide suspension that I've noticed over the years driving different GM vehicles with it. All the way back to my Z06 Corvette that I had over 20 years ago that had MagneRide. So yeah, I'm familiar with it. It's a nice thing to have. And this air suspension just really adds with not only the ride characteristics, but the ability to raise the ride height up to 2 inches to gain extra ground clearance. But this is an off-road vehicle, so let's see how it does off the pavement. Because that is why you're going to choose this trim grade, right? Because you are going to use this occasionally off the pavement. So in that way, we're not doing some hardcore off-roading today, but what we are doing is driving out here on my favorite desert washboard road. And the reason why this matters is because this road with its vibrating ribbed surface can make even the best vehicles out there feel like a giant POS. It can rattle them to their core. And believe me, I've had vehicles out here that have costed this much or more that just went to pieces. Kellegard. I love those. So what am I finding out? Well, I'm actually pretty impressed. As I was just talking about, this has a comfortable, hushed existence. And that hasn't changed much now that I'm out on this noisy washboard road. There's a little bit of rhythmic vibration, but not very much. This vehicle isn't showing me rattling in the trim. It isn't showing me rattling in the door frames. I don't feel a lot of shuddering going on. It feels solid. And a lot of that does go to the fact that we do have a fully independent suspension here. We have tall sidewalls on the tires, and we have this air suspension, because all of those things enable this to have a very isolated ride as we go out here over this rougher stuff. So if you live at the end of a long dirt road, if you go camping a lot, if you're going to be taking this off the pavement regularly, this is the trim grade to choose. Yeah. Okay, everybody, I've shown it to you inside and out. We've taken it for a drive, and I've shared a lot of my opinions and observations with you. But before I wrap this up, let me first apologize. My voice is trash in this episode. I've had a cold all week, and it's windy today. So there's probably a lot of wind noise in our audio. But all of that said, I want to share just a quick little personal story that will help maybe shed some light on my observations and opinions, particularly on some of the stuff we talked about with the interior. When I was a kid, I grew up in what you would call a Ford family, right? And everyone in our family, they were all about Fords. We owned trucks, we owned cars, Fords. Whenever a new one would come up, it would be a Ford, except when it wasn't. And that's a whole nother story. But basically, in my family, if you got together at a gathering and people were drinking a couple beers and eating food, and they started talking about cars, it was Ford was great and Chevy was crap. If you want a Chevy, something's wrong with you. You wasn't brought up right, was kind of what people would say. And so later when I grew up and started buying Chevrolets, the first thing my parents did was kind of like, oh gosh, where'd we go wrong? But that aside, what was always interesting about that was my father was perfectly okay with the GMC. Even though back in the 70s, they were virtually identical, save for maybe a grill, maybe a piece of trim. GMC trucks, Chevrolet trucks, if you looked at a Blazer, they were identical. Yet my father would be perfectly fine with the GMC, and he almost bought one once, but he would never be seen in a Chevrolet. And so I always thought that was an interesting little dynamic. And when I grew up in the 80s and 90s and I started getting into vehicles and being around cars a lot, I always did ask myself, why does GMC really even need to exist? They're exactly the same thing. Why do we need a whole nother brand network just to put a different emblem on the same exact vehicle? And so even today, when I get a GMC, I have to force myself to look at this thing with an open mind and understand, why is this here? Why do they just have to build one that's a little bit different? But here's the deal. When you look at today's GMC, they are a little bit different. And we talked about that. This has a completely unique interior from the Chevrolet Tahoe. It's more high featured. It has a more complex design. It looks a little bit more upscale because it is. The exterior design is quite a bit different. Now, yes, it's all surface level stuff, but it's different. The face is different. All of the trim going around and to the rear is different. It's not just a rebadged vehicle in the simple sense that they used to be. So what they've done here, not only have they've given us a vehicle that has a completely different flavor and visual character, they've also given us a vehicle with a different level of feature content. So it's in the middle. It's literally dead in the middle between the Chevrolet Tahoe and the Cadillac Escalade. That's why GMC exists today, to offer that middle ground. And so what do I think of this? Well, $102,000. Is this middle ground? Well, yes, in fact, it is. If you look at all of the pricing from Chevrolet Tahoe all the way up to the most expensive Escalade, this is almost right dead smack in the middle where we're at right here. You can get into the Tahoe for quite a bit less than this. Not quite half, maybe close to half. But you can almost spend twice this if you go crazy with an Escalade and buy a bunch of stuff at the dealer, right? So middle ground. And when you sit in it and you drive it, even though you have a lot of the same mechanical, the same driving character, the same driving feel that you can get in either of those other two, this just offers you more than you're going to get in the basic Chevrolet, but maybe not quite as crazy as you're going to get with the Cadillac. So yeah, middle ground. And that's really sort of my big takeaway here. Now, the one thing I will tell you that I'm a little bit let down with here, and this goes for all of the vehicles that are in this category, is the warranty coverage is only 3 years, 36,000 miles bumper to bumper. Powertrain, 5 years, 60,000 miles. At $102,000, I would think they could throw us a little bit more warranty. A lot of other brands have done that. They're doing that because when we get into this price strata, there are a lot of people out there in this world who are financing these things for 72, 84 months, and their warranty is long gone before this thing's even close to being paid off. And that creates a little bit of a financial risk out there in our economy, to put it bluntly. If we've got thousands, tens of thousands of people out there who are paying in their 70th month and suddenly this needs a whole bunch of work, it just creates risk in the economy. Ram has recognized that with their vehicles, Stellantis. So I just think there's some improvement to be done there. But that said, if you're going to keep this for any length of time, if you're going to finance it for that long, buy the extended warranty. Just do it. Because all of these systems, this air suspension, this all-wheel drive system, all the electronics, any of these things, when this thing starts getting old and any of those things start to break or go wrong, you don't want to have to pay to fix that stuff. It's going to be a lot. So that's really my only advice there. Otherwise, nice middle ground. I hope that helps. If you like what we do, you can see our latest video right there. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, please stay tuned.